Remember that any concerns can be left in the comments. We will be very attentive to answer the different concerns. The goal that brings us together today, in this talk, is for us to know what are the foundations of this course of self-knowledge. Remember that this is a course where you will learn 75 topics, 75 lectures that have as purpose teach us the steps to achieve the awakening of our consciousness. Well, but what is this about knowing yourself? When we talk about knowing ourselves, we are talking about becoming one with our own divine being. We are talking about reaching the maximum state of consciousness, which we are going to call the intimate self-realization of our own being. In order to know ourselves, we must first know what we are composed of, in order to determine our starting point in the process of awakening consciousness, and where we are going to come to. So, in order to deepen on this topic, let's talk about that we are composed of three aspects. We are composed of a physical body that we can see and feel, but we are not this physical body. The body is simply a vehicle. The vehicle of what? Of the soul or of the spirit. It is worth clarifying. What is the soul? And what is the spirit? Since many people tend to confuse it. The soul is a psychic energy that is within ourselves. It is the mental energy, the emotional energy, the instinctive energy, and the same sexual energy. Let us speak that psychic energy of our soul is currently full of many defects. In our mind and our emotion there are fears, there are sorrows, there are states of laziness, lust, anxiety, shyness, self-pity, states of spite, concern, greed, etc., etc. Then one of the objectives of this course is to cleanse this soul, this psychic energy, of all the evil that is within it. In addition to this soul, we have a spiritual part, to which we are to call consciousness, spirit or being, the divine being. At this moment, that spiritual part is found in us in 3% energy, and 97% of the rest of our energy is trapped in psychological defects. With this we can begin to conclude the other goal of self-knowledge, which is to make that spiritual part, which currently stands at 3%, become 100% consciousness, and that soul, which is all the defects that we currently have, be reduced to zero, become ashes, disappear, and thus recover all the virtues that are within it. When we succeed in eliminating all defects and making our consciousness develop in its entirety, we will reach a state of consciousness to which we will call the intimate self-realization of being and achieve that state of knowing ourselves. How are we going to achieve that goal? That goal we will achieve through the study of the 4 pillars of wisdom. These 4 pillars of wisdom will be studied through the 75 conferences. Let's talk about each of these pillars. The first pillar is called science, and it will teach us some practices of direct verification, since this study is based on verification, but not on belief. All the topics that we are going to study in this course of self-knowledge can be tested, and the verification techniques that we are going to teach are the following. It is worth emphasizing that, in lectures, we will study one by one these techniques. As for example, we will learn relaxation technique, since it is required to be able to achieve these techniques. Learn to relax the physical body, learn to relax the mind, and learn to relax emotionally. We will also learn techniques so that, in times of tension, we in the daily life learn to be in a balanced and calm state. In addition to relaxation, we are going to teach concentration technique. Concentration is going to be very important because we are going to learn how can we sustain a single thought in an activity so that we can live in the full instant, in the here and in the now. In this way, things will be much better, in less time, and we will become more productive, not only in the things of daily living, but also in spiritual development. Another practice that we are going to teach is astral unfolding. This is a practice where we are going to learn to move consciously in the world of dreams. Most of us dream when we lie down to rest, but we cannot move consciously on that plane. We cannot manipulate the dream at will. So, let's talk about how you can achieve an astral journey, how you can achieve the famous lucid dream, also known. Through that astral journey, we will be able to check many things, such as we will be able to communicate with our divine being. We're going to be able to remember past lives. We're going to be able to talk to our Divine Mother. We're going to be able to know what the goal of our existence is. So, it's going to be a wonderful thing. We'll talk about that next week. We will also learn meditation technique. We will learn how we can enter the sixth and seventh dimension and reach a state that we will call the samadhi, penetrate into the spirit world. This image shows us the world of the body, which is where we are today. There is another world, which is the world of the soul, and there are other worlds, which are the worlds of the spirit. So, we're going to learn to quiet the mind so we can escape those dimensions. In addition to this, we're going to learn meditation practices to eliminate traumas, fears, vices, etc., etc. Another of the practices that we are also going to teach will be the practice of karma negotiation. This will be lecture number 13, in which we will study what is karma, what is dharma, and how can karma be paid without suffering disease, setbacks of fortune, crisis. Then there are more conscious ways to do it, and all that we will be talking about at each of the conferences. This is a small mouth opener of everything we will find in the course of self-knowledge. Let's now talk about the second pillar of these 4 pillars. Remember that the course is based on the 4 pillars of wisdom. Now let's talk about the second pillar. The second pillar is known as art and aims for us to learn how to develop the spiritual part. The only way to give life is through sex. So, let's teach a kind of sacred sexuality, also known as the famous tantric sexuality, supersexuality, or supersex. This type of sexuality has as its foundation that it will not feel sexual energy, as it is currently done in society, through orgasm or ejaculation. Instead of that act of energy expulsion, we will learn to transmute it. Transmuting it means converting the liquid state of matter into seminal vapor, which will rise through our spine, and then that energy will be directed towards the brain, so that we can create the spiritual bodies, the existential bodies of being. In this course, we will talk about that there are 7 dimensions of nature, and that there are some vehicles or bodies to be able to move in those dimensions. Through the technique of supersexuality, we are going to be able to regenerate the physical body and the vital body, and we are going to be able to create the other spiritual body. We will be able to create the astral body, the mental body, and the causal body, and unite with the spiritual bodies, which are the Buddhic body and the atomic body. To be able to manufacture these bodies, we need to know the technique of supersexuality, which has as its foundation these 3 aspects. The first foundation is chastity. Chastity means that when sexual union occurs, there should be neither orgasm nor ejaculation. That is the basis of tantric sexuality. Instead of spilling sexual energy, we will teach some breathing exercises to transmute energy. The second foundation is fidelity, where one must have a single partner of opposite sex. That person will be the one who helps us to perform this work. The third thing that is needed is love. To love the person with whom we are going to perform this practice of supersexuality, and that the focus of practice is the development of our own consciousness. On the basis of these principles, let us now talk about each of the steps to perform this technique. The first step, already having the couple of the opposite sex, our wife or, in the case of the wife, her husband. Then we will go to the place, which would be the bridal room, and in this place, we will make the spells. The conjurations are that of the Balilin and that of the magic circle. These conjurings we will teach them in lecture number 7, in case suddenly they do not know them. After having made the energetic closure, we will proceed to realize a supplication to the Father and the Divine Mother. The Father represents the inner wisdom, and the Divine Mother represents the love that dwells within each of us. Once we make this little prayer, in which we ask you to give us concentration, imagination, and will not to pour out sexual energy, to help us to be very relaxed, and to help us control the mind. It is a request, or a small prayer, very short. Then follow the step of kisses and conscious caresses. In this step, the person is going to do is to start activating the sexual energy through kisses and caresses, in search of the male getting his phallus into erection and the female yoni is lubricated. Once the sexual organs are ready, prepared, it proceeds to what is known as sexual union, which is also known as lingam yoni. This sexual union, once given, requires each participant to concentrate on his or her own body. The male will have to concentrate on his or her spine and brain, and the woman will also have to concentrate on his or her spine and brain, but not on the partner. We're going to need a lot of concentration. We're going to need the imagination. Sexual transmutation is based on breathing. Then, once the sexual connection is given, you should start inhaling the air, inhaling through the nostrils. The idea is that it is a very, very long inhalation, hopefully 20 seconds, if it is our chance. So we inhale, imagine how the air goes down to our stomach, and imagine that the air goes down to the sex gland. That's where we're going to have to imagine. Once we imagine that the air goes down to our sex gland, we hold the air, we hold the breath. Once we take the breath, now let's imagine that that air mixes with the energy that is in the sex gland, and we imagine that the energy now goes to the coccyx. Once the energy reaches the coccyx, we begin to imagine how a golden thread rises through our spine, into the brain, and finally reaches the brow. Once we have imagined that the energy reaches the eyebrow, we will exhale the air very slowly. As we exhale, we will pronounce a mantra or word of power. This mantra is the mantra I. We will pronounce the mantra I, imagining that energy expands through our head and, from the head, it expands throughout the body. Once we have done this mantrization exercise, let us now pronounce mantra A. We re-inhale the air, hold the air, imagine that now it goes from the sex glands to the coccyx. We imagine how it continues to climb through the spine, reaches the brain, and when it reaches the eyebrow, we pronounce the mantra A. elongated. After doing that exercise, we re-inhale the air, hold the air, imagine it going towards the coccyx, climb through our spine, get to the brain, get to the brow, and now pronounce the mantra oh, oh, oh. Well, we imagine how the energy expands through our head. Well, once we do this exercise, we can feel the sexual power drop. That is, we lose erection and we lose lubrication. In that case, it is necessary that soft movements be made to recover the sexual power. Once the sexual power is recovered, the exercise is returned and done. It is returned and inhaled. The air is retained. The energy is raised through the spinal cord to the brain, and then again the same breathing exercise is repeated. I. Again it is inhaled. It is retained with the A, and then it is inhaled and retained with the 0. Very important. The idea of this practice is, do not feel sexual energy, do not reach orgasm, or get to ejaculation. You have to avoid overexcitation. You will make movements to recover sexual power and start breathing exercises, but you will never get to overexcitation to avoid orgasm or ejaculation. This exercise is repeated until the sexual potency of one of the two people is lost. Once the power has already been lost, it is withdrawn, without feeling the sexual energy. At that time, the practice of spiritual birth is finished. As we move forward in this practice, we will notice how energy begins to condense in the spine and begins the development of the spiritual bodies we are talking about. First, the physical body will regenerate by condensing the first 33 vertebrae. Then, the vital body will regenerate when it is condensed a second time, and, progressively, the astral body, the mental body, and the causal body will be manufactured to finally unite with the other spiritual bodies of which we have spoken today. Before moving on to the following topic, it is important to take into account the following recommendations. The first recommendation is that this practice should be done only once a day, i.e. every 24 hours, 20 to 24 hours. The practice can be done. Second recommendation, as soon as we finish the practice, we must not bathe immediately. We must wait at least 2 hours. The third recommendation is that this practice cannot be done if the woman is in her menstrual period. In this case, it is necessary to wait the 7 days that the menstrual period lasts. Nor can this practice be done during pregnancy or while the woman is breastfeeding. These are the basic recommendations for this practice. I would like to tell you that we will go much deeper into this topic at another conference. Number 10. Today we are just giving a small mouth opener on how we will handle sexuality. This is the second pillar of wisdom, creation or self-knowledge. Now let's talk about the third pillar of this course of self-knowledge. This third pillar is the pillar of psychology. The goal of this pillar of psychology is that we learn to eliminate those psychological defects we were talking about today. Remember that our soul is full of many psychological defects. Within them we find laziness, pride, envy, and each of these defects has caught a percentage of our consciousness. So, the aim of this pillar of psychology is to learn to eliminate each of these psychological defects so that, later, after some work, all that liberated energy becomes spiritual consciousness. There are many defects. Defects, usually, move within ourselves in the centers of the human machine. There are some defects that take over our verb and make us scream, make us morbid, make us act, suddenly make us fall into vices like masturbation, pornography. But, besides driving or moving in our motor center, they also move in our mental center. They make us imagine things, make us remember things, make us plan misdeeds like how to steal, how to adulterate. They make us imagine a lie. But not only do they enter the mind, but they also find themselves on an emotional level. On an emotional level, we feel fear, anger, jealousy, anxiety, depression, etc. And if we look further down, in energy or in the sexual center, we will find how it moves. Many times, morbidness, impotence, lack of sexual appetite, which can also become a defect. Anyway, there are many defects, and what we have to learn is to eliminate each of these defects, because, as I had told you, each defect has trapped a percentage of our consciousness. Now, how are we going to eliminate the defect? Let's explain the step by step. The first step in eliminating a defect is for the person to want to change, to want to release his consciousness. For this, it becomes necessary for the person to start self-observing. What is it that will self-observation? He will self-observe the doors through which psychological defects are manifested. These doors are thought, mind, emotional part, and sexual part. So, let's keep an eye out for what we think, what we feel, and what we want here, on the sexual part. That's self-observation, keeping an eye on each other. When we are in this process of self-observation, there will come a moment where we will discover the defect. Let's give an example. Let's say that, in the morning, we get up early. We start to self-observation, and at the moment of having the bed undressed, we self-observation. In our emotion, we begin to feel laziness. We feel laziness, and if we keep observing ourselves, a thought in our mind tells us, now I'm tending it. And in the sexual instinctive part appears the action of leaving the bed undressed and leaving things unfinished. If we are in self-observation, the idea is that we begin to prosecute, each of us, to analyze if that emotion that I feel is my consciousness. So, if I analyze, I will conclude that this emotion is not my consciousness, but is the defect of laziness. If I continue in self-observation, and that thought that told me, now I'm tending it, now I'm tending the bed, then, if I judge that thought, I will realize that that thought is not my conscience either. It is the defect that he likes to postpone. And if I observe that desire to leave, I will realize that it is the defect of the omission. So, the second step is that every defect that I observe, in the emotional part, in the mental part, or in the sexual part, be judged, be analyzed, until we become aware that that is wrong, does not serve us to awaken consciousness. Once we already conclude that that thought or that emotion is wrong, we are going to move on to the third step. The third step is to make a mental request. Let's say, Divine Mother, remove this defect from me. Then, the Divine Mother, who is the strength of love within us, will remove the defect that we have observed. In the example I proposed to you in relation to laziness, we barely feel the emotion of laziness. We become conscious. No, this laziness is not of my being. We make the request, Divine Mother, remove this emotion from me. Postponing thought, Divine Mother, remove this thought that is telling me to defer. And the action, Divine Mother, Kill me this defect that does not want to lay the bed. Then, when we eliminate the defect, consciousness is released. In this case, we release a percentage of virtue from laziness, which is called the famous diligence. But if we start doing this exercise, we will realize that in daily living, many defects emerge. For example, greed. At one point, we are in self-observation and no money comes to us. Then we can begin to feel sadness over greed. We feel sadness because that money did not come. We think that we are failures, and we want to start crying. But if we exercise, we self-observe, we feel that emotion and realize that it is greed. We make the request, Divine Mother, eliminate me this defect. That thought that tells me, I'm no good at all. I judge myself. What I am thinking is masochism. It does not serve me. Divine Mother, eliminate me this thought. That desire to weep. I judge myself. No. This is weakness. This does not serve me. Divine Mother, remove me this defect. If we start doing this exercise in everyday life, we are going to become aware of how our psychological defects begin to be eliminated more and more. And we begin to release consciousness, until the point or the moment in which we achieve the awakening and liberation of 100% of consciousness. That's a very important pillar. They're going to see several practices in which we're going to teach how to eliminate ego. For example, they're going to see lectures in which we're going to talk how to eliminate vice from drugs, from alcoholism, how to eliminate personality defects, how to eliminate the defects of lust, how to eliminate the defects of fanaticism, from mythomania, how to eliminate the defects of witchcraft, how to work the different attachments that inhabit within ourselves, how to eliminate grudges. Well, in this course of self-knowledge, there will be practices where we're going to teach how to learn to forgive, how to control the emotional part, and all that is part of the pillar of psychology. Now to finish, let's talk about the last of the four pillars, which is the pillar of mysticism or sacrifice for humanity. This pillar is very important because it aims to share everything that we are learning about the process of awakening consciousness with other people. Wisdom is not to keep it to us, but wisdom is to share it. That is the pillar that will give us the strength to do the work of awakening consciousness. Since, whenever we teach this knowledge to others, we will receive, as opposed to this or in payment, we will receive spiritual strength, understanding, and Dharma. This concept of Dharma will also be studied at a conference, which is the Conference of Laws of Karma and Dharma, which we will also study in the course of self-knowledge. Important things we have to take into account when we are going to teach this knowledge. First, we have to teach knowledge for free. We cannot charge anything. If we charge it, it becomes a business, and it would no longer be mystical or sacrifice for humanity. Second, it has to be done without distinction as to race. Free is for everyone. Free will must be respected. That is very important. And we are not going to mix it with any other knowledge or with any religion, nor are we going to add or remove it. If we meet these requirements, we will begin to feel how that spiritual force begins to vibrate within ourselves. We begin to feel what true love is. Because love is that. It is to help other people wake up. And we will be able to advance on this path. Now to finish the explanation of these 4 pillars of wisdom. If we are practicing these 4 pillars of wisdom, I come back and remind you what they are. The pillar of science, which teaches us to chat. If we begin to communicate with our spiritual being, if, besides that, we begin to practice supersexuality and begin to create ourselves, and, besides that, we begin to eliminate all these psychological defects and also teach humanity how to awaken its consciousness, then we are going to gradually integrate the process of awakening until we succeed in awakening 100% of our own consciousness. What are the objectives of self-knowledge? We already speak of them, but let us remember them. The first, then, is to achieve self-realization of being. Remember that self-realization is to achieve that maximum state of consciousness. Second, we are going to regenerate our physical body and we are going to begin to achieve human regeneration. Because also, by sharing this knowledge, we are going to put our grain of sand in society to liberate all our consciousness, to create the existential bodies of being, of which we have already spoken. We will know each of the laws, because every time we create these spiritual bodies, we will go on knowing and managing these laws to learn to transcend them. We will also know the higher dimension. That is the goal of this course of self-knowledge. As I've been telling you, it will be synthesized into what are 75 lectures, which are completely free. I want to leave you with this phrase of one of the Greek philosophers. Man, know yourself and you will know the universe and the divinity. Thank you so much for having accompanied us. The next conference will be conference number 2, which is called What is Death? What dies and what does not die? So, thank you all for having accompanied us so far.